Hey everybody, this is Jimmy Beach. Welcome to our exposure demonstration today. We are going to go over processing a portrait shoot from beginning to end in this webinar today. Feel free to ask any questions during the demonstration. We are monitoring the chat, so you can send us a note or something like that if you need to. If we do not answer your question directly during the presentation, it will be handled at the end in Q&A. Now, Exposure X6 is the latest version of our advanced non-destructive raw photo editor and organizer. It handles your full post-processing workflow, as we will show you in this lesson. About 15 years ago, Exposure began as a plugin to help film photographers transition from working in the darkroom with chemicals over to working and editing in the computer. And the accurate film emulation presets in Exposure were just what the film photographers needed. So let's begin the process. Typically, we begin by copying images from our camera card. So I have one inserted into my computer at this time. I'll open up the camera copy from card dialog. And this is pretty easy to follow along or follow through one step at a time. On the left-hand side, this is step one, you can see, select the source. I select the camera card that I have in my computer right now. Exposure handles lots of different formats of files. It holds RAW files, it'll handle TIFF files, JPEG, DNG files, and even Photoshop PSD files. The workflow is catalog free, so there's not a bunch of things that you need to do on the front end of the workflow to get started editing. Okay, so I have my source selected here as my camera card. I have the images here in step 2 where I've reviewed and selected them. I just selected all of them. And then I need to, in step 3 over on the right-hand side, I need to set where they're going to be copied. So I have I'm not going to apply metadata. I'm going to turn that off. Not going to change the name of the files, turn that off. However, I am going to save it to standard destination. I'll save it to my desktop, and I'm going to generate a subfolder, but it's not John Barclay. These are Jean, Francois UJ. There we go. So what this is going to do is create a folder on the desktop and put all these images right into it. Okay, so the reason that I pointed out that Exposure is a non-destructive editor, or catalog free, excuse me, not non-destructive, is right now, as we're copying images from the camera card over to the computer, well, they did it really fast, so that didn't really help us, but as they're being copied, we can go ahead and start to make edits to these images immediately. We don't have to wait until that process ends. So if you're copying a whole lot of images, like thousands from a wedding or hundreds from a lengthier shoot, then you can go right in and begin to edit those, even while it's still downloading to your computer. So we do this a couple of different reasons, and that is that, well, this makes images and edits really easy to back up and transfer between computers. You don't have the issues with the catalog, and there's no single point of failure should something go wrong. So what I mean is, because it's catalog free, we have our desktop folder right here, has an image of the webinar, and then on the desktop is this folder of the images that we just copied. If I drag over a Finder window, we can see I have a videos folder, and then I have this image right here on the desktop. In our Jean-Francois, we have his photos right here in the folder. Now, as I make edits, those sidecar files are going to go right into this folder on the desktop. That's it. That's where they're saved. So if I want to back up this folder of Jean's images, I can just right-click and I can compress it into a zip format, or I can drag it over to Dropbox or share it on iCloud or anything like that, just like this, and the Exposure edits, organizing information, and everything goes right along with the images. So that's what I mean by making it simpler. Okay, so let's talk about editing this shoot, because that's why we're here. So the folders panel is where we're going to begin. Again, this is just like what we're seeing on our computer hard drive, so we don't need to learn is where we're going. We know where we're at. We're right here in this folder. Exposure uses flags, stars, and color labels for sorting images. I'm going to hit tab so we can see all of the images really big. And then I'm going to use the arrow keys to navigate through the images in the batch. Now, I'm going to filter, or I'm going to apply some flags to these images. I'm going to use two things. That's the minus, and that would be the reject flag. Here's the flag button right here on the lower left. You can see the icon. Or I'm going to pick this one as a reject. I think her head's down a little bit too low. So I'm saying reject. That's a minus on the keyboard. This one looks pretty good. I'm going to hit plus. And I'm going to keep that one too. This one, I'm not going to keep. And then, so as you can see, I'm just going through here quickly, and I pick out ones that I think will work really well. That one's good. And I just make a pass through it. And no. Okay, so now that I've gone through and made a quick pass of all of those images, just using the arrow keys and minus and plus on the keyboard, I've already sorted it down. So I'll add a filter, just the pick flags. So now I have that many images. It'll show me right here on the bottom, I think. Yeah, so I have 10 images now from the original 17. So we need to pare that down a little bit more so that we don't have to edit too many images at once. Now, we've applied our pick flags, so that begins the process of organizing. Now, because Exposure doesn't have modules, all of the adjustments are available all the time. So even though we just did a little bit of some preliminary organizing to these images to pick out which ones we really want to edit or keep as our favorites, we can do it in stages. So that's what we're going to do this time. So we're looking at all of our pick flagged or our images with picks. And now let's add a little bit, let's do a little bit of raw processing. Maybe we can come back and that'll help us limit down a few more of these so that we only have our very top selects from the batch. Okay, so that's pretty quick and easy to do. In Exposure X6, we have automatic adjustment tools, and they are right here on the basic panel on the right side. So I'm going to close the pane or the dock on the left. And I'm going to make these a little smaller so we can see them all on the screen at once. So now in Exposure, you can apply adjustments to an image to correct issues in the photo, or you can apply adjustments to make a creative effect on the photo. So we're going to do both of those things. First off, we're going to apply editing adjustments to correct any issues in the photo, and that's things like exposure or brightness or contrast or something like that inside of the images themselves. So we can edit multiple images at the same time. Our exposure on these images is very similar, but as we're just looking at them, we do notice something, and that's that the sun is behind her, meaning all of these are backlit, which can always play with your exposure in your camera a little bit. So what I'm going to do is select all of the images with Command A, and then right here in my automatic adjustments, I have them all set up just the way that I want to. I mean, for the last time that I've been working in here, I set these up and I auto enhance. Okay, so you can see that I applied edits to all of those images, but her face looks a little bit dark. I'm going to zoom in here, as you can see. I want to point out that we do have a dialog here that says multiple images are selected, as you can see in the thumbnail on the bottom dock. So that means that if I make an adjustment to this one image, it's also going to be applied to all of those images. Okay, so her face, it is dark. And it's dark because they're backlit. That's okay. So we're going to go back and I'm going to make an adjustment here to the exposure bias. Essentially what this exposure bias slider does is it tells the intelligent exposure that we're applying here in the automatic exposure setting, how bright we want the end exposure level to be. So I'm going to raise this up about half, 2/3 of a stop, something like that. And then I'm going to hit reset to all those images just in case. And I'll hit auto one more time. Ah, there we go. You can see it's way better now. Her face is much more clear. Okay, that looks pretty good back from the grid view. I hit escape there. I also deselected all the images. That's with Command D. Now you can see they're all dark. They don't have any light frames around them. Okay, so we made some adjustments. Then we reset those adjustments. I think these are pretty tight. Let's make a, you know what? No, I'm going to select all these images. So we just applied some basic edits, and that's in this first layer. I'm going to rename that layer. Since we applied automatic adjustments, I'm going to rename that base layer automatic adjustments on all these images. And that way, you can see in the layers panel, we don't get ourselves mixed up by which layer is doing what. So we just applied some edits to make some corrections to these images, right? So we're taking a look at this one. Looks really nice. But there's a couple of other things that I'd want to tweak. I'm going to apply a creative look to all of these images, and then that will get us on the path toward being complete, and then we can take a look at these and actually take a close look at how we want them to look in the end. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so in the presets panel here on the left dock, open it up. The presets and exposure are organized into folders. So that's pretty easy to sort through and find which preset or which look you're going for exactly. The presets in exposure, they simulate a variety of different iconic films and creative looks. Also, the rendering engine in exposure was actually designed and built around accurately emulating these film stocks, even down to the subtleties of individual grains. So there's a bunch of different films in here from all over the history of photography and creative effects as well. So they are organized into categories, so it makes it easy to find what you're looking for. I love the colors in this shot, so I'm not going to go to a black and white. But the styling of this motorcycle is telling me it's vintage. So I'm going to go with a vintage look for this one. I'm going to go Color Films Vintage. So I have that open. I am going to go through, I'm just toggling through the different view options for the presets panel. Okay, so I'm going to, so I like Kodachrome, but this one says brighter. So I'm going to right click and select new layer with preset. The reason I'm doing that is that I want the Kodachrome effect layer to be on its own, and that way I can control it independently of all the other adjustments that we made. Okay, so now remember, we still have all of our images selected down here. So let me close this dock and I'll hit escape to go back to the grid view. So we can see all of our images here have this new look applied to them. Now it's a little bit strong, and I knew it was going to be strong, so I'm going to turn the opacity of it down about halfway, and that lightens the effect or takes about half of that Kodachrome effect away from these images, and it'll probably brighten them up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to deselect, Command D. All right, this is the part where we're going to make our final creative adjustments, and then we'll go back through and we'll sort through and just get the very best images out of this batch. Since we can do anything that we want at any time because there's no modules, makes it easy to do. Okay, so we have the shots edited. There's a creative look applied. Let's review each one at full screen and then we'll pick them apart. So I'm going to hide that lower dock. I'm also going to zoom in and take a close look. Like I said, I'm going to zoom in and hit the wrong button. There we go. I zoom in at 100% and look to see what the details are looking like on this image, which are looking pretty nice, I'd have to say. Her face looks good in this one. This thing back here is a little bit distracting in the sky, this antenna tower. So instead of taking this completely out, let's just tone it down. Now, I do not have a bunch of images selected. I only have this one. And that's because if I make a change to this one image, I only want it to affect this one image, not all the other ones. So here's what I'll do. I'll open the spot heal tool. I'm going to use the brush tool, and then I'm going to set the opacity of that brush tool lower, not all the way up. I don't want to take this out again. I just want it to kind of tone down a little bit. You can see the areas on the bottom part of the tower really aren't that dark, but this area up on the top here just is too much. Forgive the shape of the mask zone there. That was totally by accident. Okay, so now after you place your healing spot or anything like that, you can, right here in the top of the panel, you can make adjustments to it. There we go. So now that upper area is just the same on the top as it is on the bottom. Okay, great. I hit escape there. I didn't mean to. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so now let's say this image is done. I think it looks pretty. This one. Now see, her face in this one is not as good to me as that last one. I'm going to go to vertical layout. And then let's look at the image that I was just looking at here. And then this is the last image. So this photo here, I'm not a fan of this, of her face, like her facial feature in this one. So what I'm going to do is just mark that one 3. Whereas this one, I'm going to mark as a 5. That means I'm going to keep it. So you can't really see anything in this view. Let's go back to single view. And then I'll hit escape. Now, but you can see here, if I'm in grid view, you can see the star ratings applied to each one of these images on the bottom. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to go back through and I'm going to filter out each one of these depending on what I see when I'm zoomed in at 100% to make little adjustments. So this one, I'm not going to probably use that one. It's only a 3-star. Still a great shot, but it's not quite as strong as the one with the better face and head placement that we had here, number 24. Okay, so let's zoom in on this one at full screen as well. All right, this one, I think the face looks good. It's still a little bit dark, but I actually kind of like the feel. Feel like it's missing a little something. Oh, I do see something that we need to address. Okay, when you have a portrait like this, I love this backlit look. I love what it's doing to these flyaway hairs. I wouldn't change a bit of it. The only thing that I would is right over here on the edge of this frame. You can see where her hair touches the edge of this frame right here, and it's super bright. That will tend to pull your eye right down, that straight over onto there and off of this frame. So I would suggest to add some sort of blurring or vignetting or something to handle this hair condition. Anyway, right here. And bokeh is a great way to do that. It is right here. Bokeh. I think you can also hit Z or O to open that. Maybe not. Okay, maybe it's 0. Okay, so let's this is a manipulatable focus region. These focus regions are what controls bokeh's effects, the blurring effects with bokeh. So there's no blurring being applied right now, or bokeh, not bokeh, sorry. So if I turn the amount up, then you will see that there will be some blurring applied down here on the image. Oh shoot, you know what I just did? Hey everybody, remember when I said that you always need to separate your adjustments on different layers? I was selected on my Kodachrome layer. So the applied bokeh pattern that I would put on there, I'd have to make extra strong because it has a 50% opacity on that layer. I'm going to add a new layer, and then when I go to add the blurring, you can see it immediately. I'll rename this one so that's not confusing. Okay, so now I'm going to take my manipulatable focus region right here, and I'll just stretch it out because I really don't want to add all that much blurring to this image. I mean, I think it's a great image. I just want a little tiny bit just right there on her hair. Now you can see that it's even a little bit strong there. I'm going to take that out to her. I don't want to blur up her hand at all. So the straight line or the solid line here is where the effect is 0. There's no effect applied. The dotted line is where the effect or the amount of blur is applied at 100%. So I'm moving that 100% line out of the frame so that it's a gradual blurring effect that happens. Now, I don't really want to hit her head or back of her helmet. I don't want to hit the hand over here on the left, and I want it to be kind of subtle because I don't want it to take away. I think the shot's great in the first place. So now that I have this focus region dialed in the way that I want it to be, I'm going to take the amount of blurring and turn it way down there. Now, when we close the bokeh panel, you can see that the focus region disappears in the preview. And then over here on the left-hand side, we can see where that little bit of blurring does its magic. Now, I know it seems like a little subtle tweak, but it's actually a really nice tweak. So I'm going to hold down the backslash key, and we can see before straight out of the camera. And then let go, and that's our after. Before and after. Okay, great. That's looking good. Okay, so we have that image here with blurring and our Kodachrome and all that stuff. But we also have that same condition on this image. And how about this one? Oh no, see, she's moved away from the edge in this image. So we won't need to do that same effect on this image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this blurring layer that I have applied to the hair in this one, and I'll just copy the layer, go to the next image, the one that has the same condition. We can see it right there on the right-hand side, and paste layer. That was not right. Come on now. Let's try adding a new layer, and then we'll paste it. Yep, that's what I needed to do. Perfect. Okay, good. So this one I think is cool because you can see her eyes through her visor here. We're going to need to do a little bit of something there. I'm going to add another layer to this one, and I'm going to use the brush tool, and I will choose from the preset dropdown lighten. Okay, so then when I brush, this is going to apply some dodge or lightening. See, you can barely see it. It looks completely natural. That was me being funny. Okay, so I did a little bit of some squiggle on her face right there, and then I'm going to take the flow down and keep that feathering up. So I'm just going to kind of dust around there a little bit to soften that edge of that mask up. If I hover my cursor right here over the mask in the layers panel, you can see the red highlight on her face, and that's where my mask boundaries are. A little bit more in there. There we go. Now it's a little bit more, I don't know, accurate. It's a little less sticks out like a sore thumb. And it's way too bright, obviously, so I'm going to turn that down a bit. I just want to add a little bit of a punch there to her eyes, or to that visor area in this shot. It looks more like a, I don't know, astronaut or something. And one other thing I'm going to do, and that is on the basic panel, I'm still selected on this dodge layer where I did this to her helmet. I'm going to add a little bit of clarity. But I have this dodge layer at 30%, so I'm going to add a lot more clarity. The fingerprints on the visor. Well, there might be. No, you're going to lose some detail. You could put some skin smoothing right here to try to lose some of that texture. Let's see what we can do. If no one's reading, or if you're not reading all of the comments, we have a comment asking if we can get rid of the fingertips or the fingerprints on the visor here. So that's what we're going to do. So I'll use the brush tool, and then I will set it to blur. And then I'm going to set my feather down so it's a little harder. And then I can just brush in. My effect. Just like this. So she has a couple right here too. I'm going to turn the flow down for these ones and kind of do the same thing. I just add my brush and follow my brush along in there, just like that. Now, a lot of the times when you're doing brushing, you end up going over it a bunch of times to do like corrections to your brush strokes. Let's zoom out. Okay, so there. I don't know if I like it with those gone. But maybe what we can do is take them down. Yeah. So there's using blur to get rid of those fingerprints on the visor. Okay, cool. One more thing I'm going to do to this image. I actually really like this one. I'm going to add one more layer. And actually, I don't need to add a layer. I'm just doing it to make all of these the edits that we make separate. I'm going to add an overlay, one of those pretty looking overlays. So I like the lens flare effect that I have coming on here, you know, where there's this thing happening right here on her shoulder. But I think it'd look better if we punched up a little bit in that foreground with something similar. So I'm going to look for one of these haze presets. That one looks good. And that one's better. Okay, I'm going to add some orange tone in. Now, all of these are manipulatable, so we can move them and rotate them however we would like to. Just like this, I'm going to... You can see the shape of what this overlay mask looks like. It's right here. And so I'm just kind of working my way around that. I want it to fade off as it comes down over here, like it's being created by this lens effect or lens flare. There we go. All right. So there, that's just a little touch. Next thing I'm going to do is I will remove that so that it doesn't get on her face, because I want to protect her face from the effect. So here we go. Protect location. I'm going to go right there. And then I can make that large so that it removes more of the, or yeah, less of the effect touches the image, just like that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to say that one's done. I'm going to hit a 5 and mark that one as a 5. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so I'm going to, from the edit menu, I'm going to say paste settings from previous. That's all of the settings that were from that. Oh, I'm going to hit reset because it duplicated our automatic adjustments. Forgot about that. So I'll edit and then paste settings from previous. So now we have automatic adjustments, our Kodachrome, blurring. We did the dodge and lighten layer. Oh, we don't need that. Well, let's get rid of it. So we'll just delete that layer. And the blurring layer, I'm going to get rid of that one too. And then I like this pink overlay thing that's happening down here in the foreground, so I'm going to keep that one. But, you know, after looking at this image, I think I like the last one better, so I'm just going to mark this one a 2. Then I'll hit the right arrow and go to the next one. Okay, so we're going to follow suit with using our numbers to apply star ratings to these. Ooh, that one's cool. That one's good too. That's the same thing. Okay, so we've gone through all of these, and now I've applied star ratings to them, and we've applied our final edits. So I'm going to apply another filter here. So all of our 3-star and above image. Actually, let's make that 4-star and above. There we go. So all of our 4-star and above images are being kept in our batch here. So we have 5, and we've edited them. Let's see. So now the last thing we have to do, these are our top 5 images from this shoot. Here's a couple of different things that we can do. First thing that I would do is export this. I would export this so that we can post it on social media, right? So we're going to have different places we're going to post it on social media. We're going to post it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, okay? The big top 3. So I'm going to select all 3 of them real quick. I'm going to go to the File, Quick Export. And then you can see right here at the top of the quick export dialog, I have Facebook share, Twitter share, and Instagram share. All 3 of them are highlighted or checked already. You can see I have select multiple checked right here at the bottom. So what this means is for each of these 5 images that I have selected, I'm going to render out a version for Facebook, a version for Twitter, and a version for Instagram. And so it will be making 5, it will make, out of the 5 selected images, it will be exporting 15 images in the end. And they'll all be JPEGs at varying degrees of sizing and all that stuff. So I'm going to hit that. And there we go. So that concludes our demonstration today. So we'll turn our attention over to answering any of the questions that you guys would have. Before I go to do that, I do want to say that, well, thanks for tuning in. And also, if you're interested in connecting with us or with other Exposure users, check out our Facebook group, the Exposure Users Group. And if you'd like to post your work and share it with us or others, please use our My Exposure Edit hashtag.